Thank you very much. Yeah, don't comment on the quality of the idea. That's not what I came here for. Hello. I'm James Smith. Thank you for the intro. You can find me on Twitter as Floppy, which is unique, if not dignified. I'm an engineer by background. I've been doing software engineering for, must be getting near 20 years, starting with a PhD in computer graphics and now doing much more on the web. I'm a parent, got 2 little girls, and I'm an activist. And so I enjoy using technology to attack big problems. The bigger the better. Like, over the last few years, I've been playing around with democratic accountability. We ran a campaign a few years ago trying to stop a particular bill going through Parliament that was going to allow ministers to do whatever they liked. That was fun. I've spent time working in startups, working on small problems like climate change and how we can stop that. So, achievable goals are good things, apparently. We didn't fix it yet, by the way. And currently I work as the head of the labs program at the Open Data Institute, and there we're looking at the future of data, the web of data, getting more and more information out there and connected for people to use. This is nothing to do with my work. This is not an ODI project. Very much the opposite. But it's informed by that same kind of desire to attack the big problems from using the skills that I have and the background that I have. And so you look at these big problems like climate change and bits of democracy and things like that, and you just keep running up against bigger and bigger blockers, and eventually you get to what seems to be the biggest blocker of them all, which seems to be it's politics, right? I hate politics. We all hate politics. We all moan about politics continually on Twitter, especially at the moment. Politics is awful. And you get to realize that the political system we have and the institutions within it are a big blocker to a lot of the things that we want to do. On the other hand, I love open source. I've been working in open source for many, many years. I love openness in all its forms, open source, open data, and so on. And of course, open source is about collaboration. It's about working together, people across the world. A friend of mine can work with somebody he's never met in Brazil on the weekend to fix a bit of code. It's amazing, right? And we have incredible tools to do that. We can collaborate across the world in whole new ways that weren't possible before. And the benefits of that are equally accessible to everyone, given the technology prerequisites. It's about building a commons, about working together. And I love that collaboration. I love sharing those ideas, and I particularly love playing around with GitHub. I've kind of made a bit of a hobby around using GitHub for things that people never meant for it to do. It's great. I love the workflow. It's changed the way that I work. Now, if only there was some way that we could fix one of those using the other, is the initial naive thought that you go into. So, middle of 2013, I'm going to go through a bit of the history of the project, where we've got to, and what comes next, and start at the beginning. Middle of 2013, I got frustrated and bored of just complaining. I saw all these people online kind of saying things shouldn't be done this way, should be done that way, but where were we bringing all this together? So, again, naively sort of went, yeah, we should make a manifesto and stick it on GitHub, and then we could really tell everybody what we thought. I put that in a blog post, then refused to do so because I already had too many other projects. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, a friend of mine then made the repository, which kind of gave me the permission to then, get stuck in. So took that barrier away. So we started writing a manifesto. And this is it. This is the Open Politics Manifesto on GitHub. It's, for those of you, I assume everybody's familiar with GitHub. Yeah, anybody shout if not? Good. GitHub pages, people pretty happy with that? Good, fine. It's all done with GitHub Pages. It's all plain text in Jekyll, so it's nice and easy to work with. Again, another really great tool that's simple and free and anybody can use. And what we do is we've started writing this manifesto in there. I'll explain a little bit about how we do that. It started out, basically, the normal workflow that we are all used to. Make a change, open a pull request gets merged in. That's pretty much how we do it, the usual way. We do have a voting system, so that the way that it works is anybody can make an edit. Anybody can submit a change, just like any other open source project. We don't have to know who you are. We don't have to know anything about you. Anybody can submit a change. The change can be reviewed by anyone. Anybody can see that pull request, all done in the open, and all existing contributors get to vote. So this is sort of taken from the idea that an open source project will have the existing project maintainers who decide what gets accepted, and it gives it some kind of direction. It gives it a consistent direction. Very basic voting rules. You can agree. You can abstain, which is a bit more like a kind of, hold on. It means you need more votes to get it through. Or you can block. Anyone can put a block on it. If there's a block on it, it will not go in. So that's a kind of an absolute no. You need a certain number of votes to get something in. So when there are enough yes votes, and it's more than a week old, it can merge in. So it's kind of designed as this sort of long tail system. It's not a straight majority yes-no thing. We expect most contributors to go away again. A bit like Wikipedia, you have a lot of edits being done by people up this end, and you have a few being done by people down here, and you probably will never see these people again. So the voting system reflects that. You need a small number of votes to agree to have something go in, and as long as there's no blocks, in it goes. It's not fixed in stone. Somebody can go and change it later on. That's fine. And the system itself has changed a few times during that. The system is just as up for editing as the rest of it. So we have changed the voting system a few times to make it easier to unblock things. When we did have initially, you need, I don't know, what was it? 25%, 30% of the existing contributors to agree to something before it had to go in. That put you at about here. And it was very difficult to get these people to agree. So we ended up not being able to get anything in. And it was a real struggle to get enough people to agree that we could change the limit. But we did. So it all works the same way. As an engineer, I love continuous integration systems, testing systems, things like that. Automation. So the votes are counted by a robot. This is our vote bot. This is actually how it stands at the moment, as of about half an hour ago. There's one waiting up here, needs more votes. There's a few here that are ready to be merged, and there's one there that's been open too long and is probably dead. Down here, there's the big list of all the other ones that went in. At the moment, our threshold's quite low. We need more. Well, that will change as we get more momentum. And what that does, counts the votes, and for those of you familiar with GitHub, it sets the commit status. So you will be told whether something can be merged. Here we can see that one's been open long enough, but not too long. It's got enough votes, but the guy hasn't signed the contributor agreement yet, so we'll wait for him to do that. We normally ping people to do that and then go in. I have no idea why Circle CI is on there. It got added somehow. It doesn't run tests yet. I'd really love to have some tests on there, actually testing the content, testing the links, things like that. But yeah, that's a bit of a mystery. Need to fix that. But this one's pretty much ready to go. And of course, because it's Git, because it's GitHub, we can see all the history. We can see who wrote what, and when it went in, and what the conversation was about it. We can go back and look at all the conversation. Can you imagine being able to do that with a major party manifesto? Where did that come from? Who decided we wanted to do that? What little backroom deal was done? So, it's all there in the open. Who wrote what and why? So, it gets rendered out as something nice, obviously. Not many people want to see that, the sort of the code view of it. It gets rendered out as a nice manifesto. You can look at it at openpolitics.org.uk, and there is a Twitter account that tweets the various changes that go in at OpenPolitics UK as well. And We got to about a year after that, mid-2014, and we've got about 8,000 words of policy across loads and loads of different areas from about 25 different contributors. And those contributors, as soon as you get a change in, of course, you get a vote. So it's very, I forgot to mention that part. But yeah, it covers all sorts of different areas. All of these have got policy behind them. And the key ideas that were coming out were around generally progressive ideals of equality, diversity, openness, transparency, moving towards better democracy, improving the system that we have, and building that system for the 21st century, wanting to take on the big problems and deal with them based on evidence, things like climate change, etc. Being technology-enabled, but with a strong social conscience and progressive ideals, building a better world for everyone. Not this kind of Silicon Valley tech libertarianism like Peter Thiel, who thinks he can use all the Silicon Valley money and go and build an island to live on where he will be free and away from everyone. We're all on the same planet. There is no away. And we've got planetary scale problems that we have to solve together. So that won't work. We've shown, politics over the last little while has shown the division in society, and we have to deal with that. So a lot of that came through in this. So that was mid-2014. Around this time, I didn't intentionally choose a picture of him with his hand like that. This is published by the European Parliament. That's totally official. I was quite pleased with it, though. So mid-2014, I got all annoyed again after the European elections, and these guys started doing very well, which I found really, really disturbing. And I really believe we can do better. I think, optimistically, the future is going to be amazing. And if we embrace it, rather than being afraid of it, we can do good stuff. So I did something a bit stupid. Given that we had a manifesto with a whole bunch of stuff around it, I decided I was going to stand in the 2015 general election. So yeah, that seems sensible. Thought about it very carefully, kind of. Spoke to my wife, made sure she was okay. She looked at me a bit strange. Wrote a blog post, and I thought, right, I'll sit on that, and I'll announce when everything is in place. And then I got all itchy and published it about 10 minutes later, because, why wait? And then, got this in the local paper, which was quite nice. And this is 9 months before the election. Nobody's even thinking about the election yet. This is way early. And at this point, it was as an independent thing. And we were a little thing called Open Horseshoe, which was how we were doing it. And so I wanted to explore what we could do with this stuff, and show that standing for office is possible for anybody to do. So I decided we were going to do this openly, all the way. I was going to blog about everything that happened, write about it all, and show whether it's accessible or not. And these are all blog posts on my personal website that I started writing about fun things like leaflets and filling in forms. But it was, it was good. It's really interesting. So, a little overview of the campaign now. First things first, where am I? So I live about there. This is a town called Horsham. Anybody know the southeast, Sussex? This is Sussex. Gatwick is about there. Brighton is about there. London's up here somewhere. And most people just go whoosh on the train like that. Lots and lots of countryside. In the southeast, as you can guess, this is a very, very safe Conservative seat. Many of you will know Francis Maude, who championed the creation of GDS and was very influential in all of that. This was his seat. So, yeah. I'm pretty sure, at the beginning, I'm not going to win. Spoiler. Sorry. I do not sit in Parliament. But the first thing is work out where I am. So, got myself a map, Ordnance Survey website. You can order your own map centered on the thing. It's really, really nice. You can run your hands over it and feel the print. It's so lovely. And then you take a marker to it and draw out the boundary, all very countryside-y. They leave out this, which is Crawley. That's its own constituency. And we've got some really interesting places. Who's heard of Bolcombe? All the fracking protests, things like that. Bolcombe is just about here. And that's a really interesting place. It was one that was protesting against fracking that was being done there, exploratory fracking, but then also went and set up a community energy solar company. So it's not just saying, no, we don't want that, but saying, actually, we can do something better. And that, for me, was really in line with the way that I was thinking about this stuff. So, we're about 77,000 voters. I'll need about 3,000 votes to get my deposit back. Started doing some other interesting things. Started doing a podcast. This is on SoundCloud. SoundCloud.com/OpenRevolution. A friend of mine said, I'd like to do a podcast, interview you through the process. We talked about loads and loads of different things, all the different policy stuff, and this was really, really helpful to start talking through, preparing for, sorry, got a bit of a cough. Preparing for talking about this stuff in public, really useful. And we decided that we were going to, in line with the principles, was do everything openly. And that includes open data. So all of our party finances are open. You can look at them online. If you look at the website, spending and donations are all published publicly as well-structured open data. Working for the Open Data Institute, I kind of had to do it that way. We actually designed a schema with one of the startups, Spend Network. I said to him, how would you want parties to publish their finances? And he told me, and so we did. And that's an open schema anybody can use. And this is CSV stored on GitHub just the same. So we're trying to do everything as openly as we can. So got a little way through the process. It started out, as I said, as an independent. But I think that in order to build anything, in order to get brand recognition, things like that, you need to be a party in the current climate. Otherwise, you're just trying to get people to recognize your name. My name is James Smith. It's not exactly, doesn't stand out. So we formed a party, and this is it. This is something new. We formed a party that adopted the manifesto. The manifesto is still an independent project. You can think of it a bit like WordPress. You've got WordPress, the open source product, and you've got the .com over there that delivers the service for you that you can buy or vote for. So, had some core values around being optimistic about being open, democratic, rational, courageous, and ethical, those kinds of things. Internationalist was really important as well. And that people should be free and have privacy and be equal, those kinds of things. And it's not just focused on particular issues like some of the other, many other small parties are focused on a particular issue like digital rights or local hospitals here or whatever, but really trying to build a platform. And we could do this, we could do the party because the idea of the manifesto was not to build a thing, not to build a democracy system that would work for everyone. The idea was to build a particular platform that you could then put up for people to vote for. So, 7 months to go, time to get down to campaigning. We decided to do some town hall meetings. Let's go meet people. It's going to be great. I booked up a load of rooms, got all the data off the ONS, worked out where everyone was and how I was going to go round. We were going to do one a week. It was going to be great. It was going to be like this. People interested, people excited about politics. Instead, what happens is this. You spend a lot of time sitting in empty rooms. We don't have that culture of that sort of town hall meeting thing. People are not really up for that. And getting the message out is incredibly hard. I started out thinking, I can internet better than these people. I can get my message out. No. You cannot. Facebook advertising is really quite expensive and still not very useful. So it's very, very hard to get the message out on your own. Eventually, I stopped booking rooms and started having the meetings in pubs because at least I could have a pint, which was nice. But some people did come, and when I had those conversations, they were really, really good. They tended to be like one-on-one, but they were very, very interesting. Anyway, we get around to March. Start doing hustings. These are all of our candidates. We have, God, I can't remember now. That's the UKIP guy. That is the guy who's sitting in Parliament now. Oh, yes, by the way, Francis Maud decided not to run. He decided he was going to become a Lord instead. I don't know if he decided that, but he did. And this is the new guy. And these were incredibly good fun. Sitting in front of a hall of, I don't know, 500 people or something like that at one of the busier ones, with everyone firing questions at you and getting to, really talk about what you felt was amazingly good fun. One real advantage of standing, which I can recommend, is that because you are focused so much on what you want to say, you can really ignore the rest of the campaign. It's great. I could ignore the entire election campaign and just focus on delivering my own message, which was quite a relief. And it was great not being afraid to annoy people. I mean, I stood up in front of the local church's hustings and said, that people who talked about limits to, the boundary lines of freedom of speech when people were, there was a guy who quoted from the Bible, who was arrested for quoting passages from the Bible that were homophobic, potentially. And so that was a really interesting one, to stand up in front of a room full of church people and say what you thought about that. So it was really good fun. So we did local debates, but we did national too. We took part in the ITV Leaders debate. Bet you didn't know that. We did that in a slightly different studio. But on the night when the debate was being televised live, we recorded it. I sat down, wrote my answers to the same questions, recorded it, and stuck it on YouTube. And by midnight the same night, we had our own version. There was a huge amount of debate about who gets to take part. What does it matter? Everyone can take part. Why not? So we've got, this is recorded in my office, high production values and all that. But we had, 13 minutes of our own answers to what the country was asking the rest of the leaders. And again, the nice thing was I didn't have to watch the rest of it, which apparently was a complete, I won't say. So, that was fun. We got to do fun things like that. We crowdfunded the campaign, raised about £1,600, which was enough to get leaflets printed and cover the deposit as well. That was from 38 different people. And, where are we going? And then so end of March, nominations open up. We'd actually only had the party registration about 3 weeks earlier, which was that we took about 6 months to register the party, which is a whole other story. But, yeah, did the nomination forms and then started designing leaflets. We went from my initial... does anybody have children? No? They watch Peppa Pig. That's my Daddy Pig version of myself there, which I quite like. What was I talking about? I don't know. Yeah, so we started working up design. Somebody did this, I shouted out on Twitter on a Sunday night before the deadline, oh my God, I have no design, somebody help me. And someone did, in about 3 hours on a Sunday night, and I owe her a massive favour. You have to get approval from the Royal Mail. You get a free delivery of these things by the Royal Mail during the election. And a couple of days later, it goes to the printers. And next week, you have this. This is the palette of leaflets for my constituency. We were also running another candidate in another nearby constituency, Jeremy Hunt's constituency. Again, nice, achievable seat. We had 100,000 leaflets between those two, which was a bit crazy. Filled up the back of my car. You have to relabel them all and give them to the Royal Mail. It's actually all very, very organised. This is a fundamental part of the democratic process. And there are lots and lots of checks and balances. You don't just kick them out at the post office. There's people writing everything down, and there's about 10 people around watching each other, because it's part of that, part of our democracy. And had a few left over to hand out on the street. This, for a long time in my office, was really, really creepy, because nobody should have this many copies of their own face. Right? It's not normal to have 50,000 copies of your own face. It's weird. And then leafleting out in the street, giving these out in the town centre, because most people throw them straight in the bin. That was good fun. We went and recorded videos in the park, like that, a nice serious face there. That's a terrible screen grab. I could do much better than that. Wow, we have an actual video. I didn't know that was there. Weird. Right, okay, let's ignore that. And you end up in the paper, which is strange, along with all the other candidates, and then more weird things happen. People start putting up posters in their windows. Weird. And then somebody sends you one of these, which is really weird. Why the hell has somebody put an X next to my name in a thing? It's really quite odd. And you're getting towards the count all the time. And then election day comes, and after a very long night, of which I have no photographs because you cannot take photographs at the count, I got a grand total of 375 votes. Yay. Which is more than the number of people I know. So that's good. The lowest number anyone ever got was 1, which presumably must have been himself, and not any of the people who nominated him, because you need 10 people to nominate you. So, yeah, I broke that record. Smashed it. I was very pleased with this, really pleased, because what we'd done is we'd run a campaign based on some different ideas of doing politics, and comparing to the other parties who were doing this kind of thing, comparing to a bunch of other independents, some other small parties we met along the way, and people like the Pirates, we did, in terms of percentage, pretty well. These two up here were us. And I was very, very pleased with that, because it showed that, from the first time out, we could get something across to people, and people did sort of stop and listen when I was leafleting in the street. One guy even explained why we needed to do this before I'd said anything to him. He was explaining why politics needed to change and how we should do it. I was like, have you had one of these before? Because this is exactly what I'm saying. So I was really pleased with that for our first time out. So that's kind of the history, and the party is still going. I'm the party leader. We have our technology officer up the back there. And we're still building momentum and kind of refining what we were looking at. It's been very interesting looking at the changes in the political landscape over the last little while. And working out, because when we were running, there was very much not a kind of, there wasn't a lot of progressive politics going on in the last election. There is more now, which means we can focus more on our unique aspects of the openness and that sort of thing. Because over time, I've started to realize, I think, that what we have at the moment is the politics and the institutions that grew out of the Industrial Revolution, that grew out of that major change in society. And we're living through the very beginning of another change of this scale. We're only 25 years into the web. This is still the very beginning. We won't see it end. It won't end, but we won't see the full effect of the network revolution in our lifetimes, I don't think. So we've got the politics of the Industrial Revolution still trying to operate in the 21st century, whereas instead what we need is the politics of the network. What does that look like? Something much more much more based around the communities that we have now. Democracy is going to have to change to cope with that change in society. With those technological revolutions come social ones and democratic ones every single time. So what's that going to be? And who's going to do it? Who's going to be part of it? And it's a very slow change. It's a generational thing, right? We won't see the full fruition of it, but it can happen quickly. There are parties like Podemos in Spain who now have a mayor in Barcelona, and they were nothing a few years ago. So it can be quicker, but it's best not to assume that it will be. So what's that politics of the future going to look like? It's something that we're now really interested in and focused on. And there's a really good book that I'd highly recommend called Future Perfect by a guy called Stephen Johnson. And he talks about this movement growing for the politics of the network, which he identifies as a thing called peer progressive. It's not left, it's not right. It's a kind of, it's forward. It's something different, something new. And he talks about that, and it's a really good book I would definitely recommend, because what we're moving towards is, like I say, the network revolution changing our democracy and changing our society. You know, we're moving from the old centralized industrial revolution model through this kind of decentralized middle ground, but the future is much, much more distributed, purely because of the ways that we interact with each other. We all have a superpower now, right? I can talk to anyone on the planet, like that. We have the sum total of human knowledge in our pockets. That has to change things. So how do we learn with those tools to think as a society? The future is coming. Democracy will evolve, and it's starting to happen across the world. There is this new way of thinking emerging that's getting engaged with those institutions. In the meantime, our existing institutions, those industrial revolution institutions, are putting up walls and fences and dividing us from each other. If you're a citizen of the world, you're a citizen of nowhere, which I completely reject. For now, the first time we can be citizens of the world, it actually means something. And there's this backlash against that. There's backlash against globalization, putting up walls, putting up boundaries. If you're not from here, we don't want you. Which is just so alien to the way that I think, and is not the future that I want to be in. The future that I'm excited about is one where we can be better, we can be amazing. You know, there's really exciting things on the horizon and big challenges. We're thinking we have planetary scale problems like sustainability, climate change, financial systems operate at a global level. Our democracies, the way that we think, the way that we design our society doesn't yet, and we have to learn to do that. So ideas like these, the sort of virtual citizenship, you know, what does citizenship mean in a world where borders actually are fairly irrelevant? Basic income and full automation, excuse me, are, you know, trends that are almost inexorably coming. And dealing with those sorts of issues. And for me, it's about choosing what kind of future you want to be in. I have no idea, those institutions that are there at the moment, what future are they actually aiming for? Where are they going? What do they see in our future in 100 years? Where are we going? Whereas I think we can have an idea. We need new utopias, new ways of seeing the world that allow us to overcome these problems and be amazing, as I know we can. And that's where I really think that openness and this movement, this way of thinking, is political. Politics is about how we organize ourselves. It's about how we choose to run our societies. The internet and open collaboration gives us that new utopia to aim for, different to the others that people have. It's a utopia where we use our networked superpowers, if you like, to act at a global scale to solve those global problems and usher in some glorious future. It's massively utopian and naive, but if you're not going to dream about something like that, why bother? You're just managing the current system. Our world now is built on competition and atomization of the individual. The open movement, I think, believes that instead we can build a better future through reconnecting people and collaboration. And that's why I do this. So, we're just at the beginning. We need help. If this is remotely exciting, we massively need, the biggest thing we need is diversity. We need more and more people from different walks of life, feeding in ideas, taking part, taking control of this, dreaming that dream. We need people interested in getting the community going. We need designers, we need media people, we need developers to build things. This is going to be a very slow burning project, but I think we're on the right side of history in the long run. And so if you're interested, join us, somethingnew.org.uk, or follow us, have some new on Twitter. And that's time for questions. Thank you very much. Sorry about the coughing. Any questions? Yes.
So presumably the people in your district don't already subscribe to your manifesto. So to what degree are you, is your job to represent them what they actually want versus your manifesto, and to what degree is it to try to convince them that that's a good thing?
That's a really interesting question. I was surprised by how that turned out, actually, because when we started out, we thought, right, we've got this manifesto. It's got a bunch of ways of doing things in it. That's what we'll have to talk about. We'll have to talk about the same things that other people are talking about, but with our own particular spin on it. We won't talk actually about how we do it, because that's weird. People don't really care. But what resonated with people, what actually got people fired up, obviously only 375 of them, but what did kind of catch people's imagination was that it was being done differently. And so actually, when we did the leaflets that went out, it led with this idea of doing democracy in an open way that anybody could contribute to. And I really didn't expect that at the beginning. But that's what seemed to get people, the people who got excited about that. Not about, oh, excellent, you've got some policies that I agree with. It was about why you're doing it, not about how. Which I think is a really important thing. That's the question, kind of. Richard.
Do you think that any of the existing political parties could move or are they so stuck in that kind of industrial revolution standpoint? And second, totally different question.
Yep.
If you could change one thing about the process,
yep.
Not like the voting system, but like one thing about ICE, what would it be?
Current process, you mean, that we have? Can I not choose the voting system? Damn it. So I can't have PR. That's really the first thing you've got to do is get some kind of non-terrible voting system in. Sorry. Against the rules. First question, though, can the existing parties do something like this? If an existing party decides to do something like this, I win, right? It's great. If somebody forks it off and creates a massively right-wing regressive version of the same thing, I win, because they're still open, right? That's good. I doubt it. I know that people recently have tried to do some sort of digital transformation within the Labour Party. I'll leave who those people are slightly ill-defined. And I know that was really, really hard. I think if you had a brand new startup and a brand new way of doing something, you wouldn't join IBM and try and change them from the inside. That's not generally how these things work. I think that's something we should be doing anyway. I do think people should be joining existing parties and trying to change them. It's not the way I wanted to approach it. But I think we need to try all the things because, yeah, we've got to do something. So, yeah, please. Yeah.
Hi. So, one quick question, and another that I'd like to
Mm-hmm.
delve into. The first one was everything's on GitHub.
Yep.
I saw there was 34 issues. What constitutes an issue? And secondly, where does evidence-based policymaking come in here? And is this just opinion?
Both very good questions. Most of the issues are along the lines of, we really should write something on this at some point, right? So most of them are there as reminders for somebody to pick up and, oh, we don't have anything in this area. That's what most of them are. There's a couple that are more general questions about structure and things like that. Second part? Evidence-based, thank you. What we would like to get to, and what we embarked on at the beginning, was all your policies must be backed up with evidence, right? That's incredibly hard to do, but it's a really good ideal. What I would love to get to is a point where you cannot get a piece of policy in unless it's evidenced in some way. Finding evidence to back up all those things. To be honest, a lot of it at the moment probably is reckons, but politics is currently operating on that. And some of the questions are really big, right? It's very difficult to, unless you are deeply immersed in the topic, to say, well, we should be organising our economy this way rather than this way because the evidence points that way. there's evidence all over the place. We want to be evidence-based, and we do try and get people to reference wherever possible. It's a goal and an aim that we hope to live up to. There was another back there.
Yeah, I think I got quite some clues with the last question.
Okay.
But, my question was based on the manifesto that is written and continuous work that is done by people. You said at some point, so you have a dashboard, and you said that when you have enough votes,
Yep.
something in the past,
Yep.
you could program. So what does that mean? Is that do you allow any contributors to be part of the program, and then anyone can completely change the program? Or what's the limit?
So at the moment, you only need, because it's still, that long tail and the active contributors are still quite small, you only need a couple of votes to actually get something agreed. But like I say, anybody can block. So you could always, everyone has a veto, effectively. So you have to arrive at consensus. And we do a lot of back and forth in the pull requests to talk about, could you, this is really good, but this bit needs a bit more thought. And we, walk people through the process of improving that as it goes on. But yeah, you can fix a spelling mistake and you will get a vote. The day where the whole thing has some massive flame war about some very contentious thing. That we have had some quite contentious ones, haven't we, that we've worked through. But the day where that is non-solvable by consensus is the day where that'll be a really interesting day. I want to see where it breaks. I want to see where that process breaks down, where it has to fork. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be a fun day. We've got time for one more? Go on, one more at the back. Sorry, I didn't see yours.
Just thinking, in a way, the Green Party already kind of do this because they, instead of using GitHub, then they have a party conference, and instead of pull requests, people can suggest stuff.
Yes. Yep.
And they have, it's not so much a manifesto, they have this kind of broad document of the world they want to see,
Mm-hmm.
and they often get criticised, I think, because it's got some quite crazy things in it, because anyone's allowed to do anything.
Yep.
They still distill it down into a manifesto.
Yep.
And what I wonder, you're talking about diversity and about trying to get more people in. And I worry that with something like GitHub, for
Yep.
example, you're just inherently cutting
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, so the...
Use literate people
Yeah.
are going to struggle.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I guess my question is, does this need to be somewhere between what the Green Party do and what you're doing to be
Yeah.
inclusive?
Yes. Improving the inclusivity is really important. We don't use... So there is a more friendly interface. When you press the button on the manifesto to make an edit, you don't go to GitHub. You go to a different editor, which guides you through the process much more in a much more friendly way. Having said that, it's still written by me and is, I am not a UX expert, so it could be a lot better. And certainly the voting system, things like that, is arcane at the moment. We think those things can be improved. You can improve the user experience around that. What I like about this, and the other thing about inclusion is I've been wanting for a long time to run things like community workshops, where in a library or something like that, I actually ran an event like that at Electromagnetic Field back in the summer. We had a workshop full of people. I showed them the thing, and then they had half an hour to work through, do some edits, things like that. You'll see a bunch of those on that list. So it was a kind of guided thing. That's the first one of those we've done. I'd like to do a lot more, particularly targeting particular groups to get their views in. Inclusion's incredibly important, and I have absolutely no illusions that we haven't got it right. But it is an aspiration to work for it better. The Green Party's a really interesting thing, the way they talk about that, because it's like, yeah, anybody can contribute to our policy. You just have to come to our conference and then stand up and do the thing and get it in document. It's like, I can't just press a button and write the thing. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that's another thing. There are, having said that, a lot of the edits, that long tail, is mostly people who have never used GitHub before. They have an account, they've created an account, they've done one edit, and that's all they've ever done. So we have managed to get people through who are not experts in using the system to contribute to the thing. So it's a good start, but it's not finished, not by a long way.